שאלו אותנו, אם כך מצביעים בקריאה השלישית לאחר שהוסקו להסתייגויות.
Now let's look at what's happening in West Asia. Israel has launched a new offensive, but not the usual kind. This time it is a legal assault, and the target is also a bit unusual. Israel has set its sights on the United Nations. One UN body in particular, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East, usually shortened to UNRWA.
שאלו אותנו, ודאי גם אתם שאלתם את עצמכם, אם כך מצביעים על החוק בכללותו, כל ההסתייגויות, 92 בעד, 10 נגד. אני קובע כי הצעת החוק התקבלה בקריאה השלישית ותיכנס לספר החוקים.
UNRWA is an organization that a terrorist organization has completely taken over it. This legislation is disconnecting the relationship between Israel and between this organization. They will not be able to facilitate their activities or their infrastructures or their headquarters in Israel.
Israel has banned the UNRWA. It is no longer allowed to operate in the country. Israel has also passed a second law. It bans Israeli officials from having any contact with UNRWA employees. Now, the second law will come into effect 3 months from now. So what does all of this actually mean? Well, for starters, it means that humanitarian assistance to Palestinians will get severely impacted. The UNRWA is a relief agency. It provides aid to Palestinian refugees. It operates in 5 areas: the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. These are the 5 places where the UNRWA works. Now let's zoom into Gaza and the West Bank. These 2 regions are known as the Palestinian territories. They're both under Israel's control. Israeli forces occupy the West Bank and they control all the entrances into Gaza. So effectively, Israel has crippled the UNRWA in both Israel and the Palestinian territories. About 2 million Gazans depend on this agency for aid. That's almost the entire population there. And their dependency has only increased since the war began last year. But now their primary source of food, medicine, and shelter won't be able to function. This has alarmed even Israel's allies.
There is an important role that UNRWA plays that no one else on the ground can play right now. And if UNRWA goes away, you will see civilians, including children, including babies, not be able to get access to food and water and medicine that they need to live. And we find that, frankly, unacceptable.
The allegations against UNRWA's staff earlier this week were fully investigated and offer no jurisdiction for cutting off ties with UNRWA. This weekend, we therefore joined partners in expressing concerns at the Knesset's legislation and urged Israel to ensure UNRWA's life-saving work continues. We call on UNRWA to continue its path to reform, demonstrating its commitment to the principle of neutrality.
Britain's Foreign Secretary mentioned allegations against UNRWA staff. Israel has long alleged that these officials took part in the Hamas attack on October 7th last year. And that is their justification for banning the agency. Israel named 9 people who took part in the attack, and the UN agency fired them. Investigations are still on. Meanwhile, 2 Hamas commanders were also found to have been UNRWA members. The agency itself has confirmed this. Does that mean that Israel is right in banning it? Well, this United Nations agency employs around 30,000 people. About 13,000 of them, 13,000, are in Gaza. A dozen of them have been accused of having links with Hamas. Those numbers have not convinced even Israel's backers. Some Western countries did stop funding the UNRWA earlier this year, but most have resumed that funding. The US has not. But even Washington says that this agency is indispensable. Israel, though, is not convinced. It seems to have declared war on the United Nations and UN agencies. Earlier this month, Israel declared UN Chief Antonio Guterres persona non grata. He was barred from entering the country. Israel has been trying to crush the UNRWA for years, even before the war in Gaza began, and it has finally succeeded. You may remember back in 2018, Israel also formally left UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. Israel accused this agency of having an anti-Israel bias because they call the Golan Heights occupied territory, which it is. It was Syrian territory taken by Israel in 1967, but Israel did not like UNESCO reminding the world about this. So they just left the organization along with the US. The US, by the way, joined UNESCO back in 2023, but Israel still has not. Now, this points to a pattern. Every time the UN calls out Israel, it responds by banning a UN agency or even the UN chief. Yet, Israel remains a part of the United Nations. And we know that the UN is far from perfect. We point this out ourselves quite often. It's an outdated body stuck in the post-World War II era, and it does not represent the world fairly. But if you're a member, you have to follow the rules. You can try and change the United Nations from within, but you can't just ignore rules that you do not like. You can't just ban agencies and secretary generals if you don't agree with them.
Firstpost decodes the U.S. election, explains how America chooses its president. Your primer on the race to the White House. Everything you need to know about how America votes and its global implications. U.S. Election Explained, every Monday and Thursday only on Firstpost.